we subconsciously can't trust the love we're getting because we think if they truly knew me, they wouldn't actually love me. The amount of life we feel like we've lived is going to be equivalent to the exceptional moments we've had.
You did undercover work to rescue children from sex trafficking.
11 sting operations. If your person isn't your safe person, like, what are you doing?
Today on the show, we have someone who is a real estate expert, having sold over 5,000 homes. He's owner of the We Are the They coaching program, an enthusiastic world traveler, having already visited over 99 countries, worked undercover to rescue children from sex trafficking, and on top of all that is a serial entrepreneur who has his hands in over 20 companies and 15 restaurants. If that's not enough, he's the author of You End Up Where You're Heading, which is an incredible book, giving him the reputation as the most interesting man. Please welcome my good friend, Jimmy Rex.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Jimmy.
Yeah, dude, this is fun.
I'm genuinely excited to have you on the show. I've been itching to have this interview just because of all the things I just said. I mean, you are one of the most interesting men I know, an inspiration. And the first thing I have to know is, how did you see yourself when you were a kid? Did you see yourself doing all these things, or is there something you really wanted to do when you were growing up?
It's pretty funny. I like to ask my family members or friends that have known me for a long time, and they like to laugh about certain things. And I have one buddy, he's like, dude, you just were always doing whatever came to your mind. You would just go and do it, and you were genuinely confused when people didn't understand that that wasn't normal. Like, so if I had an idea, I'd go with it. I'd just do something, And so it's a blessing and a curse, but I've been to actually just got back from a trip. I'm now at 105 countries, and people say well, where do you find time to go travel like that? It's like, I just go and I just go do it. I just make it the priority or whatever I'm doing, and I've always been pretty good at trying to figure things out, and I haven't been afraid. It's a gift that I had when I was younger, is I tried a lot of things, and a lot of them didn't work. And I use that word verbiage very carefully because most people would say I failed, but I didn't fail. They just didn't work. But I always still got a benefit every time those things didn't work. And so I'd see that even though maybe this didn't become what I wanted to, or maybe this thing didn't end up in the end working, I always met new people and got more experience. And I saw that people looked up to me, not because I was accomplishing these things, but because I was trying these things. And so it really, I guess you could say, kind of inspired myself to really just keep doing that. And that's where you end up with this really crazy, interesting life.
Well, you should, there's going to be an autobiography written about your life, and I'm just curious to see what the title's going to be. Who do you think's going to play you?
Who would play me in an autobiography? I mean, I'd like
in a movie. Who would play you?
It's got to be somebody that's currently younger than me. And I don't really know any of the younger actors, I guess, because it'll be coming up. But if I had to pick someone today, maybe I'd love to have Ryan Reynolds would be my first choice.
That'd be funny too.
Yeah,
you could make
I could see
a
that
comical
working.
one.
Yeah.
So, of the 105 countries you've now been to, what was your favorite country and your least favorite country?
I made a video about this recently on TikTok, and it got a lot of people. It's got over 4 million views now because so many people got upset by it. But I couldn't really name one because it's so hard to pick one. But here's what I say is if you're dying in 2 weeks, you got one place you still can go and you've never been anywhere. Yeah. You've got, and this is what upset people, I said, you got to go to Africa. Specifically, my place I picked in Africa is Victoria Falls. Because it's funny because that's how social media works, right? That video went viral because all these idiots kept posting, Africa's not a country, Africa's not a country. It's like, no shit. I went on to say, go to Zimbabwe, which is, Victoria Falls. But the thing is because, have you ever been there, by the way?
I have not.
Dude, you've got to go. It's just a different world. I mean, you're literally, I remember one day I'm walking in our resort. We were staying at this nice resort, and there's these two giant giraffe statues, right? Like on the side of the path. It's like 10 o'clock at night. I'm just walking from, the pool to my room or something. And I look, I'm like, man, those look so real. And all of a sudden, the one just turns its neck. Just two giraffes just sitting there. And I remember we were, driving the next day, and we had to wait for elephants to cross the road. And we went and slept out in the bush. And 200 feet away the next morning, we found a pack of lions. And the whole night, you got trees where monkeys are swinging overhead, and it's just insane. I mean, it's just this different world. And by the way, you hear about all the dangers of all these places. And I'll be honest, when you go look for problems, you'll find them. I learned that doing the undercover work, right? But otherwise, you just don't. People are so excited to see you. They're so happy to have you there. I just got back from Saudi Arabia recently. And
wow, how was that?
Yeah, and you would think oh, that's scary, right?
Yes,
you just perked up in your chair.
It made me ting. It made my get the goosebumps.
Well, and that's the thing that's crazy. Is until 2019, tourists couldn't even go there. You had to go there for government business or whatever. And dude, the people could not have been nicer. They couldn't have been more like they either didn't give a care that we were there, or they were so excited to see these two guys. We went to the World Cup in Qatar, and so while we were there, we slipped over to Saudi Arabia. But they were genuinely so excited to have us there, and I didn't once feel in danger. I've been to all these places are supposed to be dangerous, and they're just not. Again, now I will say this, with Saudi Arabia, we had this little moment where we went to, it's the second most holy site in all of Islam, and this is where places where people get scared to travel, because you can innocently make mistakes. But me and my buddy were like, he's like, well, let's go see if we can enter. And I'd already researched it. You can't go in this building. It's like where Muhammad was like either born or died, one of the two. I don't know. But anyway, and we like go up to the front, and the security guy's like, yeah, go ahead. And this mosque, to give you an idea, holds 1 million people. They've had over 1 million people in it. It's ginormous. And it's literally the second most holy place in all of Islam. The first one, you can't even, Mecca, you can't even go in the city if you're not Muslim. And so we go, and the guy's like, yeah, go ahead. And we're like, wait, what? And so next thing we know, we're in this building. We asked him like 3 times. He's like, yeah, no, you're good. Go ahead. And there was...
Speaks English?
Yeah, I mean, understood it enough. Yeah, we were just like, can we go? And we were pointing to the door, you know. He's like, yeah, go ahead. And we ended up going through this thing. We kind of just participated in it because it's kind of cool that, the prayers going off and everything. I always try to do that when I travel. Just, I've done the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, and I've done, different Hindu and Buddha things in, Indonesia and some of these other places. And I'm sitting there, and they had hundreds of thousands of Qurans like stacked up in this temple, I guess you call it, this mosque. And we're both just like, oh, they probably just like, you take one, like if you want to read the Quran. And we're like, what a cool way to get our first Quran. And so we walk out with these books thinking nothing of it. We're just like literally like kind of just getting into this whole culture and everything. And next thing we know, this undercover security guy is like, where'd you guys get those? And we realized, oh no, we might have just accidentally stolen these books, the most holy book in Islam, out of their second most holy building. We're going to get our arms chopped off. And it caused a whole few hours of chaos. But other than that, it was so beautiful. And so anyway, it's kind of a longer story, but I just love the adventure of travel. But you see why some people don't. You hear a story like that, and you're like, yeah, maybe I'll just go to Boston or something.
Well, hold on. I need to know how this story ends.
Okay, so
you have your arms. You're sitting here today with hands.
Well, and so the guy my buddy kind of panicked. I call myself a professional traveler. Like, I know what to do, not to do. He's like, where are you guys staying? And I just point. I'm like, I don't know what it's called. It's some Muslim name or whatever, or Arabic name. And the guy's like, well, I need to see pictures of your IDs. And I'm like, I don't have mine on me. And my buddy pulls his out, and he's like, here you go. And so he took a picture of his visa. And so we left, and my buddy was like, and he's got a wife and kids. So it's kind of interesting because I don't. So like, I'm up for the challenge. Yeah. I'm up for the adventure, right? But he starts kind of freaking out a little bit. He's like, dude, I wish that guy hadn't taken my ID. And I haven't even thought about it. I was like,
he didn't give it back. He took it.
He just took a picture of it. But I'm like, but he's got his information now. Yeah. And we've been in Saudi Arabia for 4 hours. Keep in mind, I have booked the nicest resort it's called Alula. It's like the up and coming place where they want tourists to come to Saudi Arabia. It's literally one of the nicest resorts in the world. We're going to the Qatar for the World Cup. I've dropped $8 grand on tickets and hotels and the whole thing, And we called our buddy who used to be Muslim, and he said, hey, here's what happened. We're kind of a little bit worried. My buddy particularly, he was just really worried, but I get it. He's got a wife and kid. And this guy, our buddy, Haysam, he's like, well, how do I explain this to you guys? You went into their most holy place and you are dirty. They consider you dirty, filthy dirty. And you touched their most holy book. You basically stole it, not knowing you were stealing it. And then you went and put it back. He's like, what would it be the equivalent of here in the States? He goes, probably trying to like assassinate the president of the United States. I'm like, what? That's not even close. But like, and my buddy loses it. He goes, we're gone. We're out. So this is the actual story. So we've been there for 4 hours. He goes, I'm going around the back way, get the car. We're going to the airport. We're out of Saudi Arabia. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm just like beside myself, right?
Because you want to stay.
Yeah. I'm like,
you're not that
here.
Nervous.
Yeah. Well, at this point, I'm like, after he said that, he's like, you guys, you've got to get out of there. Get the next flight out. And it was like 5:30 at night. There's a flight to Dubai at 1:30, which is a Western Middle East, right? Yep. Like, I mean, you're good there if you're an American. You're good everywhere, I think. But anyway. And so I'm like, hey, we got this flight at 1:30. He goes, no, we got to catch an earlier flight. So we go there, and he's like, there's a flight to Egypt. It's 8 hours in the wrong direction, $4,000 ticket. I'm like, I'm so bugged. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. But then there's the part of me that's like, if it's even 1 in 1,000 chance that we get put in a Saudi prison, I guess we got to probably go.
Yep.
And
I'm with your buddy here.
I know. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, I can deal with being in jail for 5 years for this mistake. Truly, I would figure that out. If my buddy's in the cell next to me, missing his wife and kid, there's not a day's going to go by I'm not going to want to kill myself. You know?
You could handle 5 years in a
No, but
mentally?
I was willing to risk 1 in 1,000 on it. How's that?
Fair.
And no, I mean, if it was 1 in 100, I'm probably still bailing out. But we did. We went to the airport. We turned in our rental car. And but the flight was booked. It was, you know, there was no flights for 3 more hours. Well, my buddy that went with me, he's close friends with this guy who's royalty in the Seychelles, which is a Muslim country. And finally, he woke up. It was like 5:30 in Utah, and he called him back and he said, "Listen, here's what happened." And the guy said, "Look, you're good. I have connections everywhere. I can, if worst case scenario happens, you should be fine. But that being said, you actually can go in the building like they said. Probably wouldn't have taken the Quran out, but there is argument to like, it's not just like you stole this off with your hands. It's like you get to go to a court and justify it or talk about it. Like you get to represent, you know, that like, hey, here's what happened." And once we did that, he goes, "Honestly, go enjoy your trip. You're fine." We went and everything was
So you
great.
left the airport.
We went, yeah, I had to go get a new rental car, and then we just went and enjoyed the rest of our trip.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
That is pretty wild.
And I live for those kind of experiences, dude. That's what I literally try to create, just chaos and fun experiences. Because I believe at the end of our lives, the amount of life we feel like we've lived is going to be equivalent to the exceptional moments we've had. And it's like those moments that you create. I mean, watching me and my buddy go through it was so funny. And 98% of me was laughing in my ass off, 2% pissed off. The whole thing was just like, I knew it in the middle of it. I'm like, this is chaos, and we're going to laugh our asses off for the next 30 years about this. But it felt like a movie. Like, it felt like we did need to get out of the country.
I mean, you had me at the edge of my seat because when you said it's the equivalent of assassinating
and
the
that
president.
dude, don't ever call him again. Jeez Louise, man. Yeah, that was the part that kind of set off my buddy. Even if you think that's the equivalent, you don't want to say that to your buddies that are still there. It's like a little bit alarming, you know?
Well, so this is what I love about my own show is I get to be curious and ask these questions and learn from successful people because I believe success is formulaic. I think that if you reverse engineer success from all successful people, there's a bunch of common traits. Do you give much thought? Do you have like certain core values that you hold dear or that you will call your success formula?
Yeah, so I have a couple things. So, you know, I went through Date with Destiny with Tony Robbins several years ago, and you spend a week trying to figure out, you know, your values and your principal question, your primary question, and you figure out, you know, your life's purpose and all these things. And I really dug into it that week. I mean, you're putting in 14, 16-hour days because I wanted to answer that question. And most people, I don't think, have ever done enough to really figure that. So my whole course that I teach, my We Are the They men's coaching group, it's based off of 3 principles, 3 core values, which is vulnerable, authentic, and in integrity. And the principle is kind of this: when you're out of integrity, when you're not being who you truly are, when you're not letting yourself be seen for who you are, the love that we receive, whether it's from a spouse, from friends, or whoever, we subconsciously can't trust the love we're getting because we think if they truly knew me, they wouldn't actually love me. And so I can't tell you how many guys I've had come through the program where they'll say that, you know, they finally get into integrity with their wife or girlfriend or whatever they need to do. They get vulnerable and talk about things that they thought they would, you know, I mean, it's crazy the amount of, Steve Weatherford came and spoke to my group yesterday, and so did Bedros Koulian. Both guys were molested as kids. And they said 1 in 4 adult men were probably molested as kids. It's a crazy stat.
Wow.
And to hear those guys talk about it, and I've heard so many influencers and different people talk about that now. And in my program, there's been multiple guys that had never told a soul that had been molested, thought they were awful people. It's really confusing too because, you know, they start thinking like they kind of enjoy it. Like it's all this really weird things that still feels good. And just, and as you hear them finally open up for the first time in their lives, they feel safe to talk about it. That vulnerability, they think if anyone ever knew this about me, they wouldn't love me. That's what Bedros, you know, spoke to, and so did Steve. And same with my guys. But truly, it's when they're most lovable. You've never been more loved. You're innocent. You're, you know, and then all of a sudden they feel so loved. And they always say the same thing. They're like, wow, for the first time in my life, I know my wife loves me. I know that I'm loved. I know that you guys love me. And so these principles, the whole basis of it is to break that energetic block between you and your spouse or you and whoever you need to, where instead of doing surface bullshit or just trying to get around these things, you have to be able to, if your person isn't your safe person, like, what are you doing? Like, get to that place of vulnerability where you truly can be a broken man or person and be loved in that state, because then you're completely empowered to go forward. And so I would say those are the 3 principles that kind of guide. Now, when it comes to business itself, I honestly think it's this simple. My mentor, Mike Ferry, in real estate, when I got into real estate, this guy, I mean, my first year coaching with him, I sold 98 houses with 1 assistant. And this quote was on my wall. I literally wrote it on my wall. It said, the difference between successful and unsuccessful people is successful people merely have learned to do the things that unsuccessful people don't want to do. And hard work is, he would always say, real estate is simple, it's not easy. He said there's 3 things you have to do. Number 1, learn exactly what to do, exactly what to say. 2, get really good at doing it. Learn exactly how to say it the right way, even the tone, NLP, all that stuff, right? He said, and then the 3rd thing is just do it all day. Yep. That's literally that simple. And then I went on, to become the #1 agent in Utah for a decade, and over was getting all these different national awards and things. And I literally, that was all it was. It was like I learned exactly what to say. I memorized scripts. Then I learned how to say them so it didn't sound like a script. And I just learned from the best people in the country. I'd literally go fly out and spend time with them, just like I do with coming here in San Diego and spending time with people that are just much more advanced than I am. I'd just copy all the best stuff I learned. And then I just did it all day. I was relentlessly working to be the best. And, that's how I built it.
So that's how we get to 5,000 homes sold.
Yeah, well, and then I guess the only other thing I would add to that is you have to have the right people around you. That first key hire, that second key hire. I got a real estate partner right now, so I kind of turned over my real estate team to him. I do the networking and a lot of the marketing and stuff still, but he's really the machine behind it, selling all the homes now.
Yep.
And we do a lot of investment properties all over the country. And so we work with investors left and right. And he's so good. All I have to do is get somebody in front of him, and I know they're going to get an A+ experience.
Which is what it's all about.
So yeah. And then my assistant, Chris, for all these years, he was my right hand. I mean, he's so good. He never missed a thing. Like, so many people have the wrong hire, so they spend all day worrying about things they've given to somebody else to do. Mm-hmm. And I knew if I gave him something to do, it was done. I didn't have to worry about it. I didn't have to follow up with it. I never had to worry where my money was. I didn't have to worry about the client being taken care of. They got an A+ experience, and they'd always say the same thing. Like, we just love Chris. He's so nice. I mean, if it got to me, if I had to step in, shit was going south. You know what I mean? Like, I was the guy you called when you needed to save a deal or whatever. Otherwise, I was just out getting more business. You
know what I love about what you just said, though? And I think it's important. You didn't say, if I get someone in front of him, we sold the deal. You said they're going to get a great experience. And I don't know if you realize that consciously or subconsciously, but that is the difference between, because I was really good in sales as well.
Yeah.
And everyone wanted to ask me, how are you so good in sales? It's because I created an experience and I didn't worry about selling.
Yeah, I mean, you know this. If you do your job and you take care of people, you don't ever have to worry about the money. You just don't. You never do. And with our team, it's interesting. So 2007, 8, 9, I watched everyone lose their ass, right? I would sit across the table from these couples that had bought these investment homes from other realtors and things, and they were upside down $100,000. I mean, I watched people divorce in front of me, and I have PTSD from that. And so what I realized when I started buying real estate, I had the worst advice from people, and it was really hard to get good advice back then. Now there's a million ways you can get this information, but I keep it so simple, and we can do this at the end when we do. You talk to me like I'm 5 maybe, but I just wanted to be the person I needed when I started investing in real estate. Because if I'd had somebody teach me the right formula, oh my gosh, I owned 13 properties in 2006. I bought most of them the wrong way. My mentor came to me, Mike Ferry, and he said, you need to sell everything. So I did.
You took the advice.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. He's the goat. I mean, the dude, whatever he said, that was for me. But he said that, and so I kept 2 because I was living in one. And I had a business partner living in the other one. I ended up losing my ass on those 2. Lost about $150K. But all the rest I got out of, thankfully. I mean, there was one house we bought. I remember we bought it for $312, and I partnered with my brother Matt, and if I had not got rid of that, it would have caused us the biggest rift in our family because we ended up selling it at $305 once he said to sell. I took a loss. I ate the loss, which hurt back then. Yeah. I mean, I think I had to eat after commissions like $7 or $8 grand. And but that house sold a year later for like $210, and it would have just. I know those numbers don't seem like big numbers now. Back then, that was everything I'd ever.
I mean, how old were you?
I was 24.
That's $100 grand to a 24-year-old.
Yeah,
I mean, that's $1 million to most people today,
for sure. And so, but I took that advice. But but ultimately, what me and Tyler have done so beautifully is every single investor that wants to work with us, we make them do a strategy session with us first. It's a half hour to 45 minutes. We sit down and say, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? What are you truly trying to do? How much money do you actually have? How quickly? What's your your risk tolerance, how quickly do you want to try to do this? And so we can map this thing out. And all these agents in Utah, especially in California, they were selling investment properties, $580,000 townhomes. It was like, hello, I've watched this movie. I know how it ends. And sure as shit, it all flipped, and everybody gets stuck with these horrible deals. We stopped selling investment homes in Utah almost 2.5 years ago because the numbers no longer made sense. And we would just focus on 3 key things, And we make sure every investor, it fits that formula. And so when the market started going down last May, I mean, it's dropped, the median price in the country's dropped 15 to 20% in most areas. We don't have a single investor that got put in a bad situation. Not one. We don't have a single one because we never broke these principal rules that he and I learned the first go around. And that's the difference between hiring. I mean, I look back now, I'm like, geez, just off hard work alone, I was hustling and getting a lot of deals. But you compare like me now versus me when I was 25, and I'm 100 times smarter realtor now than then. And so it's like you see how experience does work for people. But that was kind of the thing that we decided to do because I just wanted to be that source that I needed, honestly, and we'd do that. And that's why people. I haven't had to make a cold call since 2010. I used to call for sale by owners every morning for 3 hours straight, 30 to 40 every single day.
Smile and dial.
It was all it was, but I got really good at it,
As an entrepreneur, I know how meaningful it is to invest in the people and causes that are close to me. And on GoFundMe, it's easy, safe, and powerful to do just that. Whether you're supporting a family member, friend, local business, or charity. And whenever you make a donation, you're protected by the GoFundMe Giving Guarantee. Visit GoFundMe.com today to help make a positive difference in your community. Hey fitness fans, ready to crush your fitness goals? Make your move to EOS Fitness, where becoming a member starts at just $9.99 a month. Gyms are open 24/7 and packed with the latest gym equipment to keep your workouts fresh. What are you waiting for? Give them a call, drop by, or hit up jefffenster.com/EOS to join. EOS Fitness, better gym, better price. Now, let's get after those goals.
And now my clients, they know where to find us. It's all word of mouth, and we're just growing like crazy.
So right now in today's economy, today's climate, you still buying homes?
So here's the number one thing with real estate. So I'll just give the rules real quick because this is
teach me.
Yeah, this is the way you never get in trouble in real estate, no matter what. Is as long as if you buy the right property, sure. And that's the answer for any market. But if you buy the wrong property, no. And just to give you a quick little thing, I wrote a real estate book. I interviewed the top 100 millennial real estate agents across the country. It's called The Next Wave of Influence in Real Estate. I wrote it about 4 or 5 years ago.
It's a bestseller.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's not my best work, but it's like it had a couple really cool things for new agents that you could learn by studying successful people. Yep. One of the questions I asked them was, what does your own real estate investment portfolio look like? And 50 of the 100 agents didn't even own a real estate property. Most realtors don't truly know these rules of investing, and that's where people get in trouble because their cousin or uncle, they're trying to go to the same realtor. But anyway, so long story short, the formula is basically this to make sure that you buy correctly. Number one, and you can't violate this rule no matter what, is the property has to cash flow no matter what. And for every 100 grand you spend, it should cash flow $100. That's conservative. That's doable. That's
every 100 grand, it should cash flow $100.
Grand that it cost, it should cash flow at least $100. That's like pretty damn easy to get.
So a $300,000 house, if I don't pull $300 into my pocket,
as a minimum, that should be your cash flow. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
After everything.
Yes. And that's the number one principle that you never violate.
Does that include insurance, property tax?
That's all in.
Everything.
Yep. Okay. Yep. After your PITI, which is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, you want to make sure it cash flows $300 a month. So think of it this way. So I'll give you a quick example. When the real estate market in 2007-8, I bought a property. I paid $285 for it. Okay. I got first for 80% of the loan and a second for 20% of the loan. You could do that back then. Nothing down, right?
I did one of those too.
Exactly.
We called them liar loans, I think.
Yeah. So I was
stated income.
Yep. So I was at $285. Market went up to $350. I hung on to it. Well, the market ended up tanking down to. By the way, I was upside down. I was renting it for $1,500 a month. I think my payment was like $2,300 a month. So I'm losing $800 a month. Okay. I justified it because I knew it was going up at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. I did it wrong. That's why I'm qualified now because I learned the hard way. This is firsthand experience. And what happened was when the market started to tank, I couldn't afford it anymore. I'm upside down $800 a month. So it dropped the value of it all the way to $215. That's where I had to sell it because I had to get rid of it. I couldn't afford the $800 a month anymore. The bank knew I was making a lot of money because I was still selling a lot of homes. I just didn't have any money because of bad decisions. And so they made me keep the loan, 0% interest. So every month the payment would go towards full principal. But I got stuck with 2 houses doing this for $140,000, $150,000.
So was it a short sale?
It was a short sale, but not really because I had to keep the loan. They wouldn't let me do on a short sale because they knew I was making $300,000-$400,000 a year still. Yeah. So I literally got stuck with 2 house payments with no houses. Like that's when you know you've really screwed up. Yes. And so, but the point of that is that house 2.5 years ago sold for $650,000. If it had the cash flow, and I could have held on to it, because if it cash flows even $100, or even if you're breaking even, hell, then I can keep that through the downturn. You're paying down your principal, so there's $400, $500, $600 a month. You're saving on taxes, which you can save a ton on if you know what you're doing, and appreciation eventually started coming back like crazy after it bottomed out in 2011. So if I'd have hung on to that, if I could have hung on to it, I would have ended up making several $100,000 10 years later. Well, Tyler, my partner at the same time, bought a house in another city for $185. It dropped to $130. He was cash flowing $100 a month. That's it. Okay. But because that house payment was covering itself, when it dropped to $130, he just kept his renter in, paid down his principal. Eventually, the house paid itself off. He sold it that 2.5 years ago for $400,000. So the only difference between what I did and what Tyler did is that cash flow that he had to be able to weather the storm. So right now, I own over 30 real estate properties, all single-family homes. I don't have to sell any of them. Every single one of them is cash flowing me. Every single one of them, I'm paying down principal. I'm getting huge tax breaks. It's perfect. And so I'll just wait till the market comes back up, and then I'll sell it. So am I buying right now? Yes. I flip homes. I do all that stuff. If you have the right property right now, hell yeah, buy it. But if it's an investment, you just don't want to violate that rule.
Rule number one.
Yeah, cash.
Is there a second rule, or is it just rule number one?
I have a lot of other little rules. Like number 2 is, if the market were to tank tomorrow and you're still glad you own the home, you have a good property.
Regardless of the value?
Yeah, because if you're glad you still own it, it means you bought it right.
Yep.
It means that you're not upside down. It means that you're making money on it still. So that's kind of like a generic way to look at it.
Sure.
But ask yourself, if you're buying a real estate property and you go, no, this property is going to go down 25% tomorrow, would you still want to own that property at the place you're getting it? And if the answer is yes, it's a good property.
So how much do you put down on a rental?
20% on everything. So
not more?
No, not usually. I have a few that are paid off, just because once you start getting too many loans, you have to you can kind of max out. So
do you play with how much down to make sure you make that certain cash flow?
Yeah. So if you're buying investment properties, and by the way, there's a million ways to invest in real estate. This is just the way that we do it. This is the way that we teach it, because it's the simplest and it's the one where you're never going to get in trouble.
5,000 homes. You know a little something.
Yeah.
About
This is the safest way to buy real estate. This is like the formula. I wish I'd known this. I'd have made a lot more money. But basically, what you want to make sure is, whenever you're buying that property, what was the question again? I'm going on another tangent.
Do you play with how much you put down?
Yeah, you want to put down at least 20%, because then you don't have the mortgage insurance, and so it helps your cash flow.
Yep.
If you're not putting that down, you just found a killer deal. But like a lot of people, they do these methods of buying where you're like, you buy owner occupied, 3% down, then you move every 6 months, and that's a way to do it.
Sure.
And as long as it still cash flows, I'm for it. But in today's market, with affordability rates too high, it just doesn't work.
Well, that's fascinating, because I'm trying to do more in real estate myself. And the challenge is, there is so much information, but there's so much information.
Yeah.
And how do you know what to do?
In general now,
how do you know
right?
What to do?
Yeah.
And
this is what I say. Like, if you had a chance to talk to somebody, with Everbowl, for example, if you had a chance to talk to somebody who's franchised 200, 400 restaurants, or somebody that's never done it, who are you going to go talk to?
Someone who's done 400
So
restaurants.
the number one thing I tell people is, you got to find people that are actually doing it, and ask them, let me see your houses. I want to see what your houses are doing. If they don't have a spreadsheet or some kind of software that's showing them I can literally pull up a tab on my Excel. You will see every house, what I bought it for, what the cash flow is, every single payment. If I showed you the amount of detail that we put into this thing, I'm not even an analytical guy. Hell, I don't even like to see that much stuff. But my partner Tyler is, and so he does it for me. But every single property, I know exactly what the rate is, and how much I'm cash flowing, I know how much is in the reserves, I know when that loan has, all these different things. And so it's just right there in front of me. But you want to make sure that whoever you're using or helping you is really an expert at it. And then you want to make sure that, you can trust them just as a person.
Do you only buy in one market, or do you scatter?
No, we're in multiple. We used to just buy Utah because we got a lot bigger commission checks. But we, just being honest, that was easy. It was in our backyard. I can go see the houses. But once that market dried up for investors, we actually studied 92 markets around the country, and we found the 3 best markets at that time. It's funny, because I went on Cody Sperber's show at that time, and I asked him, where's the one place you'd buy right now? And he was one of our 3 markets we identified. So it was kind of a validation. And then Chris Crone, who does a lot of real estate investment coaching, said the same thing. And so our numbers were good, but we basically look for, and this is part of like, what are some of the other things that go into where you decide? Well, right now we only buy in red states.
Yep.
You can get a renter in a blue state, and you can't get them out for years. They don't have to pay you. It can sink you. We only buy in markets where people are moving to, that have strong economies. So Florida's a big one for us. Arkansas, Tennessee, different areas like that. Oklahoma's another one. And then again, it's so we just studied the markets. Where do the numbers still work? And if the numbers work, we'll buy it. You know, we just partner with the top agents in those areas, and we'd run it through our formula, check it out. If it works, it works.
So when you do out of state, does part of your profit have to incorporate property management as well?
Well, so we don't do anything with the property management side. We just turn it over to the property managers in those areas. So we've found the best property, because in every one of these areas, we have hundreds, even thousands of homes that we've sold to investors. And so we find the best property managers. But what we do is, so like we'll find the best agent, and then they actually take the commission. They just cut us a small referral fee, and then we charge a fee up front to work with us. So we're still making, like, that's why I say, like in Utah, if I sell someone a $300,000 investment property, I make $9,000 on the commission, right?
Yep.
With these deals, we make about $5,000 to $6,000 per house, but we're building. I mean, we have so many clients now that are like, wow, these guys didn't try to, like, I saw these realtors selling homes, like I said, condos for $500,000-$600,000. They were never going to cash flow. They wanted the $18,000 check. You know, that's their commission on it, and I would feel guilty taking the damn thing. And so, like, all of our clients are so grateful because we protected them, and they know it. And so we have thousands of clients now that we've worked with, and most of our clients end up buying 8, 10, 15 homes.
Through your group?
Through us, yeah.
And so do you ever partner with your clients, or is it just?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so like for me, I want to buy, one of my goals by the end of this year, you know, Pace Morby came and spoke to my men's group in November and challenged us. You know, he wanted to, I think, own 100 homes last year, ended up with 400 properties or doors, or whatever it was. And so I'm like, okay, I need to be at 100 doors by the end of the year. And so my only way to get there, my loans are full. I've got all those and everything, but I partner with people. So I do the work. We find the home. We take care of it. We split part of the down payment. They're obviously doing more because I'm doing all the work. And then they do the loan in their name. Yeah. And then we partner together.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That helps.
And I've done that 15 times.
Okay.
Yeah.
My last real estate question, and then I have to ask you about your undercover work.
Sounds
because that keeps me very excited. But do you own most of your rentals in an LLC, a corporation, your personal
so any
name?
of them I partner with someone, we set up our own LLC for each one, own bank account, and we just run it all through there, do a K1 and the whole thing. Any of them that I own outside of that, I have 3 or 4 that are in like one LLC, but all the rest have their own LLC.
And you do that just for liability?
For liability and just to keep it separate. Yeah, it's actually really easy to do. Like once you kind of, if you spend 30 minutes looking at it, you can see how easy it is to do. Talk to your accountant, and and you might as well.
Yeah. Okay, so I read the most interesting thing about you is your undercover work. I need to hear this. I need to understand. So you did undercover work to rescue children from sex trafficking. Yeah, so I stopped about 3 years ago, so I don't do it anymore. To preface with that, but so I was at a conference, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, and I heard this guy get up, this guy named Paul, and he talked about he'd just gone to Colombia and they did this big sting operation to rescue these kids who are being sex trafficked. And he's telling me this story, and there's a million coincidences of this whole story, but long story short, he was a real estate mogul. He'd helped fund, he'd helped build a fund that at the time was like a multiple $billion fund. Now it's like a $30 billion fund, but at the time, and so he was like this guy that I'm just like, wow, like he's a real estate guy. He got to go do this. I want to go do it. And so I went up to him after the event and kind of blew me off, and I just kept doing what I do to get in the room when I want to be there. And eventually... Pleasantly persistent? Yeah. Well, it's, everybody needs something. Figure out what it is and go give it to them, right? Yeah. And so that's kind of what I did. And I just made myself an asset. Long story short, so there was a company a foundation that had started called Operation Underground Railroad. It was about 6 months old at the time. They're big now with like Tony Robbins and Lewis Howes work with them. And amazing organization. This guy, Tim, started it. And so Paul he was kind of the guy that first funded a lot of their first missions, or kind of helped get the money for it. And so he got me in. I got in with him, and he got me to go on this first op. And long story short, so we would go into these foreign countries, ones that need help. So they ask this organization for help. Like, you wouldn't do this in the U.S. They have law enforcement. They have FBI and CIA and all the things, right? I mean, but in some of these other places we went, I mean, it was crazy. They had nothing. And so we'd go down there. And the reason why it works so well is because we are the target for who would go do this. Americans going to Colombia or Mexico or, wherever it was, Ecuador or whatever. And so we go down there and go to the beach and start hustling and talk to the guys. And next thing we know, we were pretty good usually at finding whoever the trafficker was. And then we'd set up a sting. We'd have them bring all the girls. And I ended up going on 11 sting operations. And in that time, we were able to rescue over 100 girls. And, wow. Yeah, my first one was special. I got a plaque that Tim gave me that has some monies
framed, a picture of me, him, and one of the federales, and shows all the stats of the takedown and some of the money we used to rescue those girls. And I keep that right on my desk. And the reason why is, you know, and you know this, like I always talk about, people talk about their why. And, you know, when I was younger, I always wanted to save somebody's life. That was like this stupid goal I had. One was like, go to the moon, own a penguin, save someone's life, you know? But like, and, you know, so I keep that there because sometimes work just sucks. Some days are hard. Some days you don't know why it's worth it. And it's funny that we've talked a lot about real estate in this episode because I don't talk about it as much anymore. But when I was going through that in say 2008, 9, 10, it was so hard to sell houses. I was dead ass broke. I'd made millions of dollars and lost it. It was just, people will never truly understand how difficult that was. We have a 6-month supply of homes on the market right now. We had a 22-month supply of homes on the market. I mean, there was nobody buying homes. Everybody was upside down. Everybody put nothing down. And it was brutal. And I had another quote on my wall. I had this prospecting booth where I would just go, I had it as motivational as I could because I had to work every day. And it said, show up today for your future self. You never know who's going to need you. And that was my motivation, man, because in the moment, it wasn't fun. You're paying off bills, you're paying off debt, and that was it. I mean, it was not fun. You have to have a bigger reason to go to work. And people they focus too much on the immediate thing. And so I always was thinking forward of what would happen. So to look back now and have a weekend like I just had with my men's group here in San Diego, you know, life-changing for these guys, and to be able to go on those ops, like I didn't know where my life was going, but I'm so proud that like in those times when it was so hard, I mean, it was so brutal. I was carrying 50 listings at a time and I maybe sold one every 2 to 3 weeks. It was brutal. I had to make conversations every day with these owners, telling them they need to lower their price, borrow money, whatever they could to try to sell. But I got through it. And because of that, I built, you know, this life where I'm able to go do things like this now. And so when I had a chance to be a part of those ops, it was special, man. We rescued over 100 kids and took down over 30 traffickers on the ops I was involved in. And, you know, one of them in particular was, you know, she was an 8th grade school teacher and she used her position to get these girls into trafficking. And we took her out. Like how many dozens or hundreds of girls did we save from that one op? I don't know, but like those are the things. And so that plaque is front and center because some days life just sucks, man. But I'm like, no, Jimmy, you never know. I would have never guessed that's what I'd have been doing. I kind of just, the opportunity presented itself because of what I did when I was 24, 25, 26, because I didn't give up, because I didn't go give up on, you know, wanting to be somebody. And so, yeah, man. And so it means a lot. And it's a part of my story. It's one of those things that you just look back and you're like, how did I even end up there? But it was beautiful, man. And
did you ever get shot at?
No. I mean, if it ever got to that point, we were in deep shit because we weren't armed ever.
Yep.
The only protection we had was that it's actually where Weird That They comes from. I'll tell you this story, the name of my coaching program, because this is where it came from. So we did an op once in Latin America. I don't say exactly where, but we had found the guy that was supposed to be the trafficker. And the next morning, and we knew that because we were working with 2 other traffickers. And when they heard we were working with this guy, they're like, oh, if you're working with him, we can't talk to you anymore. Like, he's the guy. They're like, okay, sweet. So we knew we found the guy. The next day, he's like, hey, I want you to meet my boss. We're like, I thought you were the boss. He's like, no, the boss. So we go meet this dude, and they had a perimeter set. I mean, the guy had his gun on him. I speak Spanish because I served a Mormon mission in another life. And so I'm the communicator. There's 4 of us. We have our doc, our Navy SEAL guy, me, and Paul, you know, the talkers. And I'm talking the whole thing in Spanish, negotiating these kids and prices and the whole thing for 20 minutes. And we got out. I mean, if any inkling, if any little thought of these guys were that we were there undercover, we were dead. I mean, we were not in a good place. No one would have known about us for months, years. And anyway, long story short, we ended up going back from that op, and I was pretty scared because it was like, wow, we got to go back now and get these guys arrested. And we went back, and I had told my roommate at the time, like, dude, I think this is my last one. And I think it was my 3rd or 4th one at the time. And we went back and we did the sting. We got these guys taken down, and we rescued the kids and everything. And afterwards, I was just like, wow, I have to do this for the rest of my life. Like, this is going to be something that, you know, it was so amazing to watch that. So on the way home, my girlfriend picked me up from the car, or in my truck, from the airport. And it's interesting because you tell people the stories, and I thought everyone would want to hear about it. The truth is they don't. It's really hard to talk about. I've learned how to tell the story in a way that people aren't going to turn this podcast off, hopefully. Sure. But like, you start telling people what's going on, they don't want to hear it. They'd rather be ignorant to it, to be honest. And so like, I'm telling her this story and scaring the shit out of her, you know? And she pulls over and she goes, hey, I don't want you to do this anymore. This is like super dangerous and bad environment. I was like, I know, but like, this is part of my life's mission now, you know? Like, look what we just did. And she goes, I know, but like, why can't they just go do it? And without even thinking, I said, what do you mean? There is no they. We are the they. And when I said that, I was like, I still get shivers.
Yeah,
I was just like,
gave
oh,
me
shit.
goosebumps.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit, that's good. And I was like, that's gonna be the motto for my life. We are the they. And so that's the whole premise of it is, we don't wait for other people to step up. Like when something needs to be done or fixed, we're the ones that do it. And that's the premise. That's the whole how we are the they became a thing.
Hey everybody, looking for great insights? Entrepreneur.com's podcast network is the place for you. Check out podcasts like Problem Solvers and Smart Passive Income for smart advice. Hear true stories on how success happens, financial updates on dirty money, deep dives with Behind the Review, and food trends on restaurant influencers. And don't miss my new show. It's all at entrepreneur.com/listen. Let's start our success journey today. Hey there, it's your host, Jeff Fenster, and I have something very exciting to share with you today. Here on the Jeff Fenster Show, we're all about growth, both personally and professionally. Speaking of growth, have you ever heard of Everbowl? As the proud founder of Everbowl, I can tell you firsthand that we're on a mission to help everyone unevolve, to live actively and eat stuff that's been around forever. Imagine stepping back into a world where everything you eat is fresh, nourishing, and packed with nutrients. At Everbowl, we've got you covered with our wide range of superfood bowls. But it's not just about the food. It's about a community of like-minded individuals who are determined to embrace a vibrant, fulfilling lifestyle. Join us on this journey as we redefine what it means to be healthy and active. So if you're ready to unevolve and be the best version of yourself, head over to everbowl.com and check out our menu. And that's a great segue into, because yesterday I came and got to meet part of your group over at Wild Jungle and watch the group of We Are the They and get inspired just by the group of men that you're putting together and the mission you're after.
Yep.
And learn about it. And now I want to be part of it. And it clearly lights you up. I mean, when you talk about it, I can just see the passion in your eyes. I mean,
oh, it's so fun, dude. Like to be able to do it. It's the funnest thing I've ever been involved. I don't feel like I ever work, and I've never worked more in my life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so valuable because I think, and I'm going to let you tell me so I don't butcher it, but a safe place for men, especially in today's world, and I think you named the three of them, but the one that triggered me was vulnerable. Mm-hmm. It's hard for men to be vulnerable. It's hard for men to be in especially around other men. Mm-hmm. And how are you cultivating that? I mean, how is that happening?
Yeah, so I mean, we do when guys sign up for my program, we get them all together the first weekend. I'll give you a couple of the exercises I did. You guys can do this with your company, your family, whatever. This is not proprietary. I came up with this, but it's just the most beautiful exercise. And because I'd been to so many masterminds and events and people are flexing and they're trying to, what they're really saying is, hey, please get to know me. I promise I'm worthy to get to know. But it comes off as like braggadocious and freaking frontin' and all this shit. And I just hated that. I remember I went to a networking event at Dan Bilzerian's house one time and I got blown off by a few guys and, it was like Jordan Belfort was there, and, Jim Quick, all these different people. And I just felt like a jackass. And I just remember feeling like, God, I hate feeling like this. Like, why do we got to be like this? And so I've been to all these events. I know what I didn't want. And so when I first got the guys together, the first night what I did is I had them make a badass list. Are you familiar with Jen Gottlieb? Yep. So she taught me this. We were sitting there with me, her, and Prince E at this event that Dan Fleischman had put on. And me and Prince were talking about how, you get this imposter syndrome. Like, we're just guys. Like you kind of like, am I really doing anything, And Jen was like, guys, I have the best exercise to help you get out of imposter syndrome. And so what she said, she's write down a list of everything that makes you badass from the time you were a kid. Like, this is your chance to brag. And I'd had a guy about 6 weeks before I met her on this. He was at a house party of mine and we were laying there and he was just talking himself down. And so I said, bro, this is the safest room you're ever going to be in. For the next 5 minutes, you're going to brag your ass off. Everything you can possibly come up with. And I saw him light up as he's telling us. I said, let me know all of it. Anything that you ever have wanted someone to know about you that you just feel like you'd be bragging if you told them. And he lit up. And so I kind of took her badass list. So I have the guys write it out. And then the key to it, she says, is then you're going to have somebody read it to you or you read it as if you're reading it about somebody else. And all of a sudden you listen to it and you're like, God, this guy's kind of a badass, Like I remember when I read mine, I'm like, shit, I want to hang out with this guy. And but then I had them all get in a circle, so little pods of 10. And one guy gets in the middle and he reads his list. And then the guys go crazy celebrating him like they just won the Super Bowl. This is the first night we're all together. And so every guy is celebrating, and then they all I get emotional thinking about it, because it's like you watch them change their lives, but they get in this big circle, and then every guy has an accountability partner, and they get up and they have to tell what makes their accountability partner a badass. By the end of the night, everybody is like, I feel seen. I don't have to front. I don't have to prove myself. These guys know I'm amazing. And it changed that whole energy. And then the next day, we do one other exercise. I get them in a big circle. I have a list of about 40 questions. And I learned this one going, there's a lady named Catherine Hoke. We went to the Pelican Bay prison one time. Entrepreneurs, you teach these, she doesn't like using the word film. I can't think of the right word, but the criminals, you know. Yep. And these are dudes that are in there for murder, lifers, solitary confinement guys, the whole bit. And we get in a line across from each other. And she calls it step to the line. And basically she'll say stuff like, if you had a parent tuck you in at night, step to the line. And you watch all the entrepreneurs, almost every time, all of them step forward. Not one of the 100 guys that are in prison, right? And then all of a sudden she asks other questions. If you watched a sibling get killed by your 20th birthday, step to the line. Half the prisoners. And it's just crazy. It's just like this. So I took kind of that. Tears. Yes. And it was just a life-changing moment for me when I went and did it, right? And that's kind of why I love to do experiences. You don't know which moment's going to change your life. And so I took that and I kind of put my own spin on it. So I got all the guys in a circle. I had a list of 40 questions. And but by the way, first I went and I told a very vulnerable story, and I talked about all the shit that wasn't so sexy about me, right? And I talked about how I had to work through these things and things I was still working through. Then I had one of my best buddies who's also an influencer do the same thing. So by the time we got to the circle, the guys were primed. And then I had the question. So I started out with like, if your parents ever divorced, step in the circle. Half the guys step in, step back out. Then I'll say something like, if you've ever had a sibling die, step in the circle, 1 or 2 people. If you ever had cancer, 1 or 2 people. Then I start getting a little bit more personal. If you've ever been cheated on, step in the circle. If you've ever cheated on your spouse or girlfriend, step in the circle. If you have a pornography addiction or have in the last 6 months, step in the circle. If we start getting very vulnerable, and all of a sudden every guy's in tears, because the problem with men is we feel like we're alone. We don't have these safe places, these containers where we can go to actually learn that, like, wow, I'm not the only asshole going through this. But in that moment, every single guy. And so then we give them an opportunity once this activity is done. And one of the questions I asked is, do you feel lonely often? I think 48 of the 48 of the 50 guys stepped in the circle. And it's just a crazy thing. And guys get up and they start talking about, hey, I just found my wife cheating on me. Hey, I've had a pornography addiction since I was 12. I've never told a soul. And these guys, and they just work through all these different things, whatever it might be, right? Or, I've been cheating on my girlfriend. I don't know why I do this, and whatever it might be. And that's really sets the whole foundation for the whole thing. And then the next day, there's this giant rope swing. If you go to my Instagram, Mr. Jimmy Rex, you can see it. We do that. We jump off this cliff. It's 280 feet down. My buddies literally go set it up the day before. It's a rope swing. It's like, this isn't like you pay money to go do it. Like, it's not there one day, it's there the next. And I have them leave behind the limiting belief, negative relationship, or bad thought that they've been holding on to, and leap into an empowering one. So they come up out of that canyon a new person, and that's the first weekend we're ever together. And then it's a 2.5-year program where we just keep going and driving. So that's my, I don't remember the original question, but that's what we do with help men get vulnerable and go through
it's something I think all men should at least explore. If it's a way for us to get vulnerable and be around other men and have the freedom and approval, permission to get real with each other.
Yeah, you don't have to have your shit together. It's like no one cares where you've been. No one cares what you've done. Like, let's all go together here. But you feel seen for the first time. You feel loved for the first time. Every man carries these weights, and they don't. It's like, set it down, dude. Yeah. Let's go. So
my last question before we wrap up is your new book. You end up where you're heading. You end up where you're heading. I was going to say you're going where you're heading. You end up where you're heading. Tell me.
Yeah, the subtitle of it is The Hidden Dangers of Living a Safe Life. And the whole premise is so many people on their deathbeds, nobody regrets the decisions they made. You got a girl pregnant in high school, you love that little kid more than anything you've ever done. Like, you screwed up a business, the lessons you learned are invaluable, right? Like, most things you tried or didn't, like, you don't have regrets, but people really regret the things they didn't do. It's the conversation they never had to forgive somebody. It's the person that always had a crush on and never let them know, it's like the girl that got away or whatever it might be, or the business idea that just died in your head. And so the whole premise of what I wanted to do with the book is I take people through Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and it just shows them the steps of how to be the hero of your own story and how to really take control, live your life by design, and go after it. So the whole book, I use examples from my life of, with the 10 different stages, and then different people that have been in my life that I've learned from, and we walk people through how they can do that.
I have to get it. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna read it, so the next time we talk, I'm gonna be familiar, because Jimmy, honestly, like I said from the beginning, I was so excited to have you on my show, just because not only are you the most interesting man as a reputation, but just knowing you and watching you, your thirst for life, your ability to cut through the crap and get it there. So those listening who don't follow you need to go follow you. If you're a man out there and you're interested in improving your life, being the best version of yourself, I recommend you check out the We Are the They program. I got a little taste yesterday, and I hope I get the opportunity to spend more time with you and your group, because you're changing lives, you're changing the world, and thank you, man. Thank you for coming on and spending this time with us.
Thanks, man. No, we'd love to have you. And yeah, it's been so fun. It's so cool, because I worked so hard to build some of these really special relationships, and like, you know, you have a day like yesterday to have you there and have Steve there and Tarzan and Dan, all these guys that I worked so hard to build a real connection with, and not one guy I had to pay. They just love what we're doing and they step up, and so we'd love to have you super involved, man. It's awesome. And
thank you.
Yeah, it's fun.
Dude, thank you. Thank you.
You bet, man.
Thank you so much for listening. If you're looking to level up your relationship capital game, then take a minute and text the word Jeff to 33777 for a free copy of my Network to Millions playbook. The link will also be provided in the show notes below. See you guys next time.